Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
Today on CityCast Boise. Idaho lawmakers passed a controversial new law this year that's already reshaping how cities like Boise handle homelessness. The anti-camping law makes public sleeping illegal and allows the state to sue cities who don't enforce it. So what's happening now that this law is in effect? It's Wednesday, August 6th. I'm Lindsay Van Allen, and this is what Boise's talking about. Joining me today is Connor OHora, the Outreach Program Manager for Catch. Thank you so much for being here today, Connor.
Yeah, thank you all for having me.
So Boise already had an anti-camping law before this new law, which is sometimes referred to as the Galloway Law, went into effect. How is this new state law different in practice from the previous laws that we had?
Yeah, my understanding is that it gives law enforcement kind of less leeway on how to address folks that might be camping or experiencing homelessness, whether in a tent, in a vehicle, and it kind of demands enforcement in one way, shape, or form. And so there was already a lot of great triaging going on between folks experiencing homelessness and the Boise Police Department, directing them to shelters, kind of hearing a little bit more about their situation. That's still happening. I think what we're seeing is that increased accountability, that increased enforcement that this law requires of local governments.
And how has your work changed since this law went into effect on July 1st?
I think what we saw, even in the months leading up to July, is just an already increased uncertainty on folks feeling safe and knowing kind of what to expect. The way the law is written is incredibly vague. And so even information that we were able to provide folks is not really satisfactory in understanding what their experience might be like or how it might be changing when they interact with law enforcement as of July 1st.
When you say that this law is vague, it doesn't seem like it's vague in the enforcement necessarily. What parts of it are vague, and how does that impact people who might be sleeping in their cars or in a tent or, just generally not in a shelter?
Sure, absolutely. The enforcement is pretty specific. What was vague is really who it would be applied to. It really just leaves a lot of things up to question of who this might apply to, how it will be enforced, and who it will be enforced upon. You or I laying down on a blanket in the park with a few things might appear different than someone who is experiencing homelessness, and we just didn't have a lot of confidence that that's going to be enforced the same.
And what kind of questions and concerns are you hearing from the people who are being impacted by this new law?
It's just that their options haven't changed as far as where they can go immediately. Our shelters in the community do a lot of really great work, and they are hard places to be, and they are not places that can be accessible to everyone, unfortunately. And those are our only really options for immediate shelter. So someone who leaves housing and might be staying in their car or has been experiencing homelessness for an extended period of time, and shelters are no longer an option for them. Those options don't increase just because this law is now impacting them. And so kind of not knowing where to go and what options are, and their instances of interacting with law enforcement are just increasing, causing further barriers to their long-term goals, including housing.
And Connor, do you know, has the volume of police calls or encounters with people because of this anti-camping law, has that gone up since this law went into effect?
Yes, anecdotally, like what we hear from our clients is that places where people are congregating are interacting with law enforcement more. That increased interaction is leading to, more tickets, more interaction, which can be really stressful situations. What we hear from our partners at the Boise Police Department is that, starting July 1st, those calls came in right away, and that they have come in really frequently, and they're having to address a lot of those calls, really from starting July 1st.
And you briefly mentioned that there potentially are issues with shelters and not everybody, it's not a good fit for everybody. What are some of the biggest barriers that are preventing people in the Treasure Valley from using shelters in the first place?
Absolutely. I want to share a lot of those with you, but I really do want to preface that our shelters do really great work. They are the only option for folks experiencing homelessness to have immediate shelter, and the staff are dedicated. The staff work really hard to make these environments as best suited as they can. What we hear from our clients who are experiencing homelessness is that there are several barriers to shelter. So these are just a few examples. So families who experience homelessness can rarely stay together. And so what it looks like sometimes is one parent might be asked to go to one adult shelter while maybe mother and young children go to another one. And families are obviously really hesitant to want to break up. Along on that same vein of family is pets are often not welcome, just capacity and what shelters are able to accommodate. So, ESAs sometimes aren't accepted and service dogs are, but even that can create barriers to their housing and kind of what they're able to do in shelter. Other things that we hear are just health concerns. So people who have either stayed in shelter before and had a negative experience with bed bugs or just communicable diseases, not wanting to return to those environments or fearing because they have chronic illnesses, they don't want to enter into environments that can further degrade their health. Folks who have varying mental illness, congregate environments like shelters can be really difficult places when you really need your space and that's no longer an option for you. People who are pursuing recovery, that sometimes sheltering environments can be triggering and that they're not the best places to maintain the recovery. These are just a few reasons, and there's many more. And these are just some of the most common ones that we hear from our clients.
I'm glad they're there and they serve a very important purpose. But like you said, they aren't perfect and they aren't perfect for everyone. Is it reasonable for cities to expect people to use them rather than sleep outside? I know that's what proponents of this law said several times is well, if it's available, cities can require you to sleep there rather than sleep outside. Is that a reasonable expectation for cities?
I go back and forth on it, to be honest with you. There are simply not enough beds for everyone experiencing homelessness if the shelters could accommodate them. So that right there in and of itself is a pretty big factor when it comes to housing everyone for the night who might be experiencing homelessness, is that it's not physically possible. I also think that it's just not acknowledging of the barriers that do exist. If it's not a space for everybody, then it can't be a space that everyone is expected to be in.
Got a kid who's always asking, why? Summit Innovation Lab is the place where curious kids in the Treasure Valley thrive. Summit Innovation Lab isn't your typical STEM center. It's educator-owned, totally local, and combines professional-grade equipment with the personalized attention only a master's-level educator can provide. And they keep classes small, so every child gets the support they need. They offer a variety of year-round classes, from Lego robotics to preschool engineering and computer science. Summit Innovation Lab keeps your child growing and learning. Is your child's school closed on Friday? Looking for something for them to do on those random wonky days off during the school year? No problem. They offer Friday camps and are open every day the schools around the valley are closed. And this fall, they're leveling up with their new nonprofit, STEM Boise, and hosting Girls Who Code to bring even more access to STEM fun. If you're ready to fuel your kids' curiosity and get them off those screens, head to summitinnovationlab.com to explore classes.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
The city of Boise voted to enforce this law, but adopted a $10 fine. And that part of the law was kind of left up to the cities how they exactly wanted to enforce this. How do you interpret the city of Boise's response with this relatively small fine?
It is the minimum enforcement they could do to stay in compliance with the law. And so I think that is an effort by the city to do the least amount of harm as possible, and also acknowledging that the law requires them to enforce. So I think for us to expect that there would be zero enforcement, it's just simply not possible.
And even though it's a very small fine, relatively, and the city is trying to do the least amount of harm, can you help us understand what that $10 fine and the enforcement of this law could actually mean in somebody's life?
Sure. I think just the increased interaction with law enforcement can cause a lot of barriers towards people long-term goals. Like, so each of these infractions is, if someone doesn't have the resources to address them, it is a court date. It is a ticket. It is another mark on their record. And so more tickets for, abandoned vehicles, littering, things like that. It's just an increased amount of barriers when it comes to accessing resources, applying for housing, as far as, length of criminal history and recent criminal history are huge barriers when it comes to applying for housing. And then also, for those that it will lead to incarceration, that just kind of erodes any progress someone might have made with service providers towards housing.
So, Connor, it seems to me throughout this conversation, I've heard law enforcement has less discernment in how they want to handle this on a case-by-case basis. They're getting more calls. And then even with a minimal fine, it can, it's people are being put in the legal system where they're having court dates, they're having to pay fines, they might go back to jail. It's going to affect their ability to get housing. It seems like in no way is this helping or addressing any of the major issues that people are facing. And in fact, is just creating more issues for the city, for law enforcement, for everyone trying to work with our homeless population. How has your outreach team and nonprofit groups, how are you responding to this increased enforcement pressure? How are you helping these communities right now?
Yeah, I think the work that we do is consistent, and understanding that new barriers are placed on our population all the time. What our outreach team does is we go throughout Ada County interacting with anyone who is experiencing homelessness and providing anything from immediate basic needs support, food, water, clothing, to long-term housing planning, and all the work that goes in between. That work just becomes more challenging the more barriers our folks face. The only way to end homelessness is through housing. So our goal is always to find housing opportunities for the individuals who are seeking it. And that's not a fast process for many of our folks. And there's many steps along the way to help them get to what stability looks like for them.
And do you feel like even though the city is required by law to enforce the Galloway law, do you think that the city's focus is still on housing first and working towards housing? Is that still a priority in Boise?
I do feel that way. I know a handful of people that are working in the mayor's office, specifically on housing, specifically on homelessness. We partner with the Our Path Home staff at the city often. And I do think it is a priority for the city of Boise right now to address both of those issues.
And Connor, let's just, in this magical imaginary Idaho, let's say you could go to the legislature and create a more humane or effective policy for addressing the needs of homeless people within our community. What would that policy look like?
To be honest with you, I don't have like a magic bullet, you know. What we know is that criminalization does not help folks experiencing homelessness, and that it makes it worse. The best I could offer from what we see is that punitive measures never help anything when it comes to housing, when it comes to homelessness. Our efforts, in my personal opinion, should be more on creating housing stock that is genuinely affordable in our growing community for this increasing population. The only exit to homelessness is housing. And so our focus should be immediate help on quality of life for those who are in a continually traumatic situation, and focus on their long-term housing by developing that housing stock.
And what will the long-term cost to our community be if we keep criminalizing homelessness instead of addressing its root causes and the ways we could actually lift people out of homelessness?
Yeah, I think when measures are more reactive, our community is still paying that price. When folks rely on emergency rooms for medical care versus, someone who can help them navigate resources and establish Medicaid, costs us all more, costs the community more. Folks who are relying on 911 calls as their only source of safety, that response is also can impact our community. So like we are taking care of individuals in this situation one way or another, and it's way more cost effective to think about stability in housing versus kind of reacting to what's happening day after day.
Well, Connor, thank you so much. I know that this has been a tricky transition, and a lot of things have been in kind of an upheaval mode since this law went into effect. So I really appreciate you taking the time to come on the show and explain it and give us more insight into what's happening since this law has been passed.
Yeah, I really appreciate the conversation. These things need to be talked about, and it's not black and white. Like there is a lot of nuance to how people enter homelessness. Everyone's experience in homelessness is different, and everyone exiting homelessness has a different story. That is the best part about my job, is the stories that I get to hear, the stories of resilience, the stories of determination, and they are out there. People are actively trying to improve their situation, and they're working extremely hard to do so. Measures like these take them a few steps back.
And before we go, I wanted to give a shout out to our latest CityCast Boise neighbors, Kayla M., Emily A., Anna H., Molly H., Amy P., Debbie W., Dawn M., Gil M., Sydney B., and Emily B., who said, "I love the Treasure Valley and want to stay connected to the constantly changing rhythms of this place I call home. Thanks for keeping this Boise local plugged in." I couldn't have said it better myself. If you want to become a CityCast Boise neighbor, head over to membership.citycast.fm. We'll see you there. That's all for today here on CityCast Boise. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to our Hey Boise newsletter for more great local stories. We'll be back tomorrow morning to discuss what a new reality show could mean for the Treasure Valley. You won't want to miss it.